Hi friends, opposition decision. So that is a second video. Why is that? Well, it is because the opposition decision is one of the proceedings. Opposition proceedings are one of the most important proceedings you will come across very often. So I made it a bit heavyweight here. Therefore, the second video I will walk you through one decision, a simple decision, but which gives you a lot of insights. Now, how is the right to be heard or the right of defense respected in your home country? Is the opposition division, opposition proceedings, is it organized after registration or before registration of the application? Well, you make your own analysis, but I think you will come to see the differences here and will come to understand what are the opposition proceedings in Europe in order to explain it to your client in your home jurisdiction, wherever it is, in South America, Southeast Asia, Africa, I don't know where you are, but I think it will be helpful for you, and this is for that reason a kind of an important second lesson on the opposition proceedings. And here we go. We have the decision of an opposition division. The opponent is a Swiss company. It is in the European Economic Area, Switzerland, and it could have done by a Swiss lawyer for that reason, but the company relies on a French one close to Paris. The defendant is a Dutch company with a German lawyer. As you can see, I chose a decision in English, so the applicant probably has chosen English as a first or maybe as a second language. The application was introduced, as you can see, on the 3rd of June 2020, and the decision was taken on the 27th of August 2021, so roughly 14 months later, and this is what you have to count as a opposition proceedings, unless there is what I told you in the last video, the conciliatory proceedings, which you probably have to add if you opt in. Now, in the beginning of the decision, you have the ruling. In this case, the opposition is rejected. The cost is borne with the opponent, which has to pay 300 euros as lawyer's cost. In fact, the opponent has already paid the opposition fee, and there is no interchange of money with regard to that. Now, you have the reasons, and you have the conflicting marks, the earlier international registration Intersport against the application Hypersport. Both are figurative marks and they are as depicted. The grounds of opposition are 8.1b. 8.1b is the ground which basically says that, among others, the earlier international registration designating European Union can be the basis for opposition. We have seen Article 8 wording already in the previous video, and the 8.1b is the one most used by the opponents. Next, we have a text block on LOC, likelihood of confusion. We know already the criteria from previous videos. Then the goods and services of the earlier mark and the goods and services on the second page of the contested mark are indicated. Rather than proceeding to a comparison on similarity, I told you that the decision is drafted from the outcome, from the examiner's perspective, to make its life easier. In the case at hand, it is assumed that the contested goods are identical to the goods of the earlier mark, although they are not. You can see it. Well, at least not entirely. So the examiner could do that because she thinks, even with identical goods, which are not, the best case for the opponent, the opposition will be rejected. On the relevant public and the degree of attention, the decision goes roughly over them, concluding on page 3, here it is, that the degree of attention of the consumers is from average to high. There are some which are average consumers, other are professional consumers. Professional consumers are high. Even for average consumers, they can be higher if the goods are highly priced, for example. Well, out of all criteria of likelihood of confusion, this one, the degree of attention and the relevant public, is probably the less relevant criteria for an everyday case, as this one here chosen for you. Coming to the marks now. After some text blocks on earlier mark, the earlier mark is analyzed. The verbal part is divided by the public, so by the relevant public, when it is perceived, into its elements, inter and sports. It analyzes further, the decision analyzes further the distinctiveness of the word elements and concludes that both are weak due to non-distinctiveness, the one, and descriptiveness, the other. The figurative element in the beginning is the distinctive part of the entire mark. So going to the 4th page, as to the contested sign, it is similarly organized with a distinctive figurative element at the beginning and a low distinctively word element also to be put into two words, dissected into 2 words by the public. Now going to the 5th page, there are a total of 8 pages, right? As you would have expected, the decision goes on with a visual, oral, and conceptual comparison of the marks, which we have gone through in previous videos on likelihood of confusion. It concludes that the marks are visually lowly similar, hourly similar to a below average degree, and conceptually not similar at all. Although they coincide with the meaningful word sport, this word was non-distinctive and on this account not able to establish a conceptual link between the marks. Well, the relevant consumers, as being non-distinctive, they will not retain the words, and therefore there's no conceptual similarity as to the examiner. Do you agree on this? How is it done in your own jurisdiction? Or how would it be done in your own jurisdiction? Here, as to the marks, they are overall lowly similar only. Now going to the page 6, I told you that the distinctiveness of the earlier mark is one of the criteria of likelihood of confusion. Do you remember? The opponent's lawyer knows that naturally, in order to establish an enhanced distinctiveness through use, that is what he has to do, and file the corresponding evidence, it referred to the examiner to another opposition proceedings of 2019 in front of EU IPO. Well, this is not the way to proceed, and the opponent's lawyers was not diligent here. It could have been much better, and the client could have been served better. First, reputation is not assessed in the abstract, right? It is not whether one mark is reputed or not it has to be assessed with regard to the goods and services. So if, for example, I don't know, Cartier is not reputed for cars, right? It is reputed for watches, but not cars, or not airplanes, or whatever. So in that parallel case, the opponent's lawyer referred to, reputation was found to exist with regard to retail services in class 35, as the decision says. So class 35 is retail services, but they are not covered here by the earlier mark. So it is irrelevant what the opponent says here with regard to enhanced distinctiveness. It is badly argumented here. But also, a general reference to parallel proceedings is not sufficient. You have to identify the exact documents you want to rely on. So that would mean if you have documents presented in different proceedings, you would need to identify those documents. So that would be in the brief so and so, and the exhibit first, or A, B, C, and D. And then the examiner would be required to look at the exhibits and see whether they establish what the opponent is claiming. Or even better, the good way to proceed would have been to submit all the evidence to the examiners in a new fashion, in a new way in that proceedings, so that it is clear to what the opponent's lawyer is referring to establish the enhanced distinctiveness through use. Now, in the present case, establishing a kind of reputation or enhanced distinctiveness for the early mark could have been a game changer for the decision, as we will see in a moment. We come to the global assessment on page 7 now. The findings so far are resumed by the examiner. He has taken into account the different criteria of likelihood of confusion, as we have gone through several times now. Concluding, the marks in their distinctive beginnings, so these figurative elements in the beginnings, they are dominant because they are from at the beginning, and they are distinctive because they don't have any, so to say, any meaning for the consumers. In the distinctive beginnings to which the public tend to focus on are sufficiently similar to safely distinguish the signs on the marketplace. So the opposition is rejected entirely. So you see that the goods are identical according to the examiner, right? The goods are identical, the marks are lowly similar, and now here we are, the distinctiveness of the earlier mark is low. So she comes to the conclusion that the marks are sufficiently similar even for identical goods to distinguish, so the consumer will not be confused on the marketplace. Now, if the lawyer of the opponent would be diligent, he would look now for some evidence of reputation or evidence of enhanced distinctiveness, evidence of use on the market, in order to establish an enhanced distinctiveness even in one, he needs to establish in the whole territory, in fact, in the whole European Union. But Intersport is a company which is quite well known. It has a lot of presence as retailer in the different member states, so it is not entirely excluded that the opponent would be able to establish this. This enhanced, and then it would change the decision. Probably the opposition would go through. Now, as to the costs, now page 8, the last page, as to the cost, the losing party has to pay the lawyer's fees of the winning party, that is €300 according to Article 109 Trademark Regulation. So you may say it is only €300, and you'll say that is not very much, and it's true, very much. Not very much. The €300 does not cover probably the costs of the German lawyer. The German lawyer will likely have agreement on honorary with its client, which is much beyond of that. But he will receive still the 300 euros from the other party, and it may be deducted from the agreement he has with its client, right? So that was it, what I wanted to tell you. There was a lawyer which was not diligent enough in order to come through. Perhaps the decision is a bit on the edge, I would say. You can go also the other way by saying, well, the sport is non-distinctive, it is kind of descriptive, but the consumers will still see it, and you have the red and the blue, and the beginning with something of a same size, and so the overall impression, if you don't go into the details, the overall impression is quite similar. So you could have decided differently as well. But once, from the examiner standpoint, if one of the parties, one of the lawyer, is not diligent enough to put all the stuff on the table, all the weapons on the table he has at his disposal, well, why the examiner probably thinks, well, why should I help that opponent, that poor opponent, if the lawyer does not do its homework? So that is perhaps a kind of thinking of the examiner. They are humans as well, which might play a role. Now, I've told you much about the opposition. I focused on the opposition because it's important to see. It's an important proceeding, and you will come across a lot of oppositions. There are a lot of oppositions, 80,000 or so, no, 20,000, I can't tell. There are a lot of oppositions being taken. There was a backload at a certain moment, so there was a much higher number. The backload probably is now down, but there are still a lot of opposition decisions which have been taken. So you can see this on the eSearch database, eSearch case law database, and this is one which is downloaded from the eSearch database very easily, so you can look into them. So you have come very far, I would say, with regard to the EU trademark system. Now it goes a bit to less relevant, but still you have to come across a cancellation division, for example, an appeal decision you have come across. This will be for the next videos. Thank you.